At the very moment I stood at the altar, gazing tenderly into the eyes of my chosen bride, my father, a man who had been my mentor and pillar of support for 28 years, suddenly rose and delivered a devastating blow of truth, uttering just 12 words, "He is not actually my son." To grasp the full tragedy of that moment, allow me to rewind 30 seconds. Picture this: 200 of Connecticut's most influential families, frozen in impeccable rows on white chairs, the June sun gently filtering through the leaves of ancient oaks surrounding our ancestral estate, and Amelia, my beautiful, radiant Amelia, holding my hands as the priest spoke words of eternal love. I, Holden Westbrook, son of Vernon Westbrook, heir to a thriving $90 million real estate empire, was just 3 minutes away from marrying the woman I sincerely loved. My life seemed the embodiment of perfection. It was then that those fateful 12 words were spoken. My name is Holden, and this is the story of how I lost everything I had and found myself on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. But before I continue, I must introduce the key players in this tragedy, as each played a significant role. Vernon Westbrook, my father, or rather the man I believed to be my father, had transformed a modest real estate firm, inherited from his own father, into a formidable empire. A tall, distinguished man, 6 feet 2 inches tall, with silver hair and piercing eyes reminiscent of a winter storm. He dominated any room he entered. He taught me how to tie a tie, throw a curveball, and negotiate business deals. Yet, he also kept the darkest secret of my life for nearly 3 decades. My mother, Bethany Westbrook, was a Greenwich aristocrat even before she married Vernon. An elegant blonde with a smile that could light up any charity gala, but one that never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. I always considered it one of her quirks. But, as it turned out, guilt closely resembles aloofness, especially when you're harboring such a heavy secret. One cannot forget my sister Sloane, 3 years my senior, twice as perceptive, and in my opinion, more deserving of leading the family business. While I focused on designing buildings, she analyzed profitability and developed expansion strategies. She often joked that I inherited the artistic gene and she the business one. Neither of us suspected then how literal that statement would prove to be. My fiancée, Amelia Thornfield, worked as a pediatric nurse at Yale New Haven Hospital. We met when I was designing a new children's wing. She challenged every one of my design decisions until I realized she was right about everything. That's when I knew I had to marry her. She had an astonishing ability to see through pretense and discern what truly mattered, or so I thought, until she ran away from our wedding. The ceremony took place at the Westbrook estate in Greenwich, on 50 acres of impeccably manicured land that had belonged to Vernon's family for 3 generations. The rose garden where we stood was my grandmother's pride and joy. She often told me that roses were like family, beautiful, but they could hurt you if handled carelessly. Standing beside me as best man was Deacon Pike. We had been friends since we were 7 when his family moved into our neighborhood. Their money was new, ours was old. Vernon never missed an opportunity to remind Deacon of this, but it didn't matter to me. Deacon was the brother I chose, even though I already had a sister with whom I shared blood, or so I thought. The priest had just reached the part of the ceremony everyone jokes about, but no one expects to actually happen. If anyone knows any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. At that moment, I heard a chair scrape across the stone patio. The sound, like fingernails on glass, shattered the perfect silence of the moment. All eyes turned toward Vernon Westbrook, who was rising from his seat. "Dad," I said, even managing a slight chuckle, "I hope this is one of your jokes." But Vernon wasn't smiling. His face was carved from granite, and when he spoke, his voice carried the same authoritative power he used in boardrooms when he was about to crush a competitor. "I have something to say," he declared, and my blood instantly turned to ice. My mother's face went deathly pale. "Vernon, please, not now." "If not now, then when?" Vernon's voice boomed across the garden. "When he has children? When he takes over my company? When he lives his entire life based on a lie?" "Is my whole life a lie?" Amelia clutched his hands with renewed force. "Holden, what's happening?" she asked. "Holden," Vernon uttered, and his name sounded like a sinister curse in his voice. You are not my biological son. Your mother had an affair 29 years ago. I knew about it from the moment you were born, but I kept silent. I raised you as my own." A heavy sigh swept through the crowd, like a gust of wind through the tree leaves. But this wind carried not coolness, but condemnation. 200 pairs of eyes fixed on him, the impostor in the elegant tuxedo, the false heir to the Westbrook throne. And beyond the estate, as he would later learn, a limousine already waited, ready to reveal the truth of his true origins. That morning had begun like a beautiful dream. He awoke in his childhood bedroom at the Westbrook family estate, the very room where he once built Lego cities, dreaming of becoming a great architect. The bright June sun filled the room with its light, and for a moment he just lay there, savoring the feeling of absolute happiness. At 28, he had achieved everything Vernon Westbrook had prepared him for. He graduated with honors from Yale, earned an architecture degree from Harvard, and designed 3 buildings that had already garnered admiration in prestigious architectural publications. But most importantly, he was about to marry Amelia, a girl who in some inexplicable way made all his accomplishments seem secondary compared to the simple joy of seeing her smile over morning coffee. "Rise and shine, sleepyhead." Deacon burst into the room, 2 cups of coffee in hand, half his tuxedo already on. "Big day, buddy. Ready to say goodbye to freedom?" "More like ready to start real life," he replied, gratefully accepting a cup of coffee. "Sounds sickeningly romantic," Deacon chuckled. "Didn't you swear you'd never marry before 40? That was before I met a girl who fiercely argued with me about window placement in a pediatric ward and turned out to be absolutely right." Just then, his mother knocked on the door, already dressed in an exquisite pale blue gown that likely cost more than most cars. "How's my beautiful son?" she asked, but there was something strange in her voice, a tension he attributed to pre-wedding jitters. "I'm fine, Mom. How are you?" She walked over to him and began to fix his hair, even though he hadn't even showered yet. "Your father has been in his study all morning. You know how he gets before big events. He always needs to be in control." "But this isn't a business presentation," he laughed. "He just needs to sit back and watch me get married." His mother, his hand paused in the air for a moment. "Yes, just watch." Looking back, he realized how many signs he missed then. How long she hugged him. How she started sentences and stopped mid-word. How she looked at him as if trying to memorize every feature of his face. "Mom, seriously, are you okay?" "I'm proud of you," she suddenly said. "No matter what happens, remember that I will always be proud of you." "Come on, Mom, it's just a wedding, not a war." She smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course, I'm just nervous." After she left, Deacon watched him carefully. "Your family is a bit odd today, even by Westbrook standards." They're always odd," he replied, heading for the shower. "You know my family." In truth, the Westbrooks were American aristocracy, at least in Connecticut. Vernon's grandfather started with a single apartment building in Hartford. Vernon's father turned that building into a small real estate company. But Vernon, a true genius, transformed it into a vast empire, encompassing shopping centers, office complexes, and luxury condominiums from Boston to Washington. His fortune was estimated at $90 million, and that was just the beginning. As he dressed, he heard the orchestra tuning its instruments in the garden. Sloane knocked on the door, looking stunning in her bridesmaid's dress. "Little brother," she said, using a nickname he always disliked, "you look great." "Thanks for everything, Sloane. I know you basically planned all of this." "Amelia planned it all. I just brought her vision to life." She paused. "You know I love you, right?" "All right, what's wrong with everyone today?" he asked. "You're acting like someone died." "Can't we just be a little nervous? Our little Holden is getting married." She helped him fasten his cufflinks, the very ones that belonged to their grandfather. "You know," she said quietly, "no matter what happens, you'll always be my brother." "Of course I will." "Sloane, you're scaring me." "I'm just saying. It's not blood that makes us family, it's love." At the time, he thought she was just being philosophical. Now he understood she was trying to warn him without speaking plainly. Sloane had always been the smartest in the family, but even she couldn't prevent the impending catastrophe. Something inevitable was approaching. Guests began to arrive around 2 in the afternoon. Among the glittering crowd were Vanderbilts and Rockefellers, names embodying long traditions, immense wealth, and aristocratic lineage. Uncle Ford, paternally patting his back, uttered words filled with pride. "You're a true credit to our family, son." Cousins, teasingly, alluded to the upcoming nuptial bonds. Everyone present behaved quite normally, except for his immediate family, whose faces expressed a sorrow as if they were attending a funeral. At precisely 3 o'clock, standing at the altar, the young man watched as the garden filled with the fragrance of roses, the rays of the sun, and the faces of people he had known since childhood. Deacon, standing beside him, tried to lighten the mood with jokes to quell his nerves. The string quartet began a solemn melody, and all eyes turned to Amelia. This day was meant to be the start of a perfect life, but instead, it became the end of everything he knew about himself. The string quartet transitioned to the wedding march, and there she was, Amelia. Her dress seemed to catch every ray of the afternoon sun, as if woven from magic. Her father escorted her down the aisle, but his attention was solely on the bride. She gave the groom that special smile that seemed to say, "Is this really happening?" At that moment, his heart overflowed with joy. Everything was perfect until exactly 7 minutes passed. Reverend Morrison, who had known the family for 2 decades, had confirmed Sloane, officiated his grandmother's funeral, and was now to marry him. The priest's voice, speaking of love, fidelity, and the sacred bonds of matrimony, echoed through the garden. "Amelia Grace, do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do," she replied, gently squeezing his hands. "Holden Vernon, do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," he said, pouring his whole soul into the word. If anyone knows any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The ensuing silence was meant to last only a couple of seconds, enough for the Reverend to move to the next part of the ceremony. But instead, there was the sound of a chair being pushed back. Vernon Westbrook rose from his seat. "I have something to say." All eyes turned to him. His first thought was that it was some inappropriate joke. Vernon sometimes had a cruel sense of humor, especially after a few drinks, but now he was completely sober, and his expression was serious. "Dad, what are you doing?" Holden asked, still trying to smile and salvage the situation. "What I should have done years ago," Vernon replied. "Holden, you are not my biological son." These words hit him like a powerful blow. He involuntarily recoiled, almost stumbling over the altar steps. "Your mother had an affair 29 years ago," Vernon continued, his voice echoing through the garden. "I knew about it from the moment you were born, but I kept silent. I raised you as my own son." "Vernon, please." Holden's mother rose from her seat, tears streaming down her face. "Not like this." "How then, Bethany?" There was malice in Vernon's voice. "Should I have told him at Christmas or at his college graduation? There's never a good time to tell a man his entire life is a lie." Amelia's hands loosened in Holden's. "What is he talking about, Holden?" "I don't know," he replied, his voice sounding strange and distant. "Dad, stop this." "Don't call me that," Vernon snapped. "I'm not your father. Your father was some artist your mother slept with while I was building this empire." The crowd erupted in whispers, like a swarm of angry wasps. Holden saw the faces of people he had known his entire life, and their eyes held shock, pity, and worst of all, curiosity, as if he were some exotic creature displayed for public viewing at a zoo. "Tell him, Bethany," Vernon commanded. "Tell him about Theodore Ashford. Tell him how you begged me to raise another man's child." Theodore Ashford. The name meant nothing to Holden, but it clearly meant a great deal, because his mother collapsed back into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. "Is it true?" he asked her. "Mom, look at me. Is it true?" She lifted her tear-streaked face, her flawless makeup ruined by the streams of tears. "Holden, I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you so many times." The ground fell out from under him. 28 years of calling Vernon father. 28 years of being Holden Westbrook. 28 years of lies. 28 years of deception. "But here's the interesting part," Vernon said with a chilling smile. The Westbrook fortune, all 90 million, will only go to the legitimate heirs of the family Sloan. Holden gets nothing. Absolute zero. No trust fund, no position in the company, not even the car I gave him for his 16th birthday. "Dad, stop!" Sloan exclaimed, jumping to her feet. "This is inhumane. He's your son in every way that matters." "He is not my son at all," Vernon retorted. "He's a changeling I nurtured in my nest." Holden looked at Amelia, searching her eyes for some support, but saw only fear, confusion, and something even worse, disgust. "You knew?" she asked, drilling him with her gaze. "You must have known." "No, Amelia, I swear, I had no idea." She pulled her hands from his. "Your whole family knew. Everyone but me. I can't take this," she said, backing away. "This is insane. Your father just announced you're not who you say you are. What else have I been kept from? What else did you lie about?" "I never lied to you. I didn't know myself." "I need time to think. I need to be alone. I can't right now." She gathered the hem of her dress and fled, her veil trailing behind her like a ghost. The silence that followed was deafening. Holden stood at the altar, watching Amelia disappear through the mansion doors. Her white dress was the last thing he saw before the door slammed shut. 200 pairs of eyes were fixed on him, waiting to see what Holden Westbrook, or rather, Holden Nobody, would do. "Amelia, wait!" He tried to rush after her, but Vernon's sharp voice stopped him. "Leave her, boy. She's too good for you anyway. A Thornfield marrying a bastard. Her family will never recover from such a disgrace." Something inside Holden snapped. He turned to the man who had raised him, nurtured him, pretended to love him for 28 years. "You waited until my wedding day," he said in a surprisingly steady voice. "You kept this secret for nearly 3 decades and chose to reveal it today." "You needed to know your place," Vernon replied, adjusting his cufflinks as if it were a business negotiation. "I couldn't let you marry this girl under false pretenses. She deserves to know who she's tying her life to." False pretenses? Holden had been in the dark. How could he lie about something he didn't even know? "Ignorance doesn't change the facts. You're not a Westbrook. You never were." Deacon, Holden's best friend, stepped forward. "Mr. Westbrook, with all due respect, this is disgusting. You raised him. You called him your son. You can't just erase that from existence." "Look at me," Vernon said coldly. "Security will escort him off my property within the hour. He is no longer welcome in any Westbrook-owned home or business." Holden's mother finally found her voice. "Vernon, you can't do this. He's innocent. Punish me if you want, but don't touch Holden. You—" Vernon laughed, a sound full of contempt. "You think this is punishment? This is mercy. I could have exposed your affair 28 years ago. I could have divorced you and left you with nothing. Instead, I raised your illegitimate son and gave him every advantage, the best schools, the best opportunities, everything a real son would have received. And this is how you thank me?" "By telling the truth?" Holden asked. "You think you deserve gratitude for a lie?" The crowd stood in absolute silence, hanging on every word. Holden noticed his Uncle Ford whispering something to his wife. His cousins were recording the scene on their phones. Members of the Vanderbilt family were already hurrying to their cars, unwilling to be associated with the unfolding scandal. Sloan pushed through the crowd and stood beside Holden. "Holden, don't listen to him. You're my brother. You always will be." "Half-brother," Vernon corrected. "And if you continue to associate with him, Sloan, you'll lose your position in the company." "Are you threatening me?" Sloan, "You ungrateful pup." "Grateful? For what? For the humiliation? For waiting until the most important day of my life to destroy it? For making sure everyone I knew witnessed my disgrace?" the hero cried, tearing off his boutonniere and throwing it at Vernon's feet. "Keep your name, your money, all of it. It was never mine." He strode away proudly, refusing to run, unwilling to give Vernon the satisfaction. The voices of Deacon, Sloan, and even his mother called after him, but he didn't stop. "If you leave now, you'll get nothing," Vernon yelled in desperation. "Not even your personal belongings, nothing." The hero turned back just once to utter words full of resolve. "I'd rather have nothing and be myself than have everything and be your son." The crowd parted before him as if he were contagious. Perhaps he was. Perhaps scandal was like an infection and no one wanted to catch it. Whispers followed him like a swarm of locusts. He knew? Poor boy. Bethany must be mortified. 90 million gone. Who is Theodore Ashford? Reaching the main entrance of the estate, he realized he was without his car, phone, or wallet. Everything. Vernon had planned it all down to the last detail, turning his humiliation into a spectacle of maximum impact. He stood in his tuxedo on the side of the road, a man without a name, without a family, without a future. At that moment, a limousine appeared, black, elegant, its engine purring like an expensive cat. The rear window smoothly lowered, and he saw a woman in her 50s with silver hair pulled back into a graceful bun. Her eyes struck him with their unusualness, the same rare green color with flecks of gold that he had never seen in either Vernon or Bethany. "Holden Westbrook?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "I don't know who I am anymore," he admitted honestly. "But yes, that used to be me." The woman exited the car, tall, graceful, in a blue dress that spoke of affluence without shouting about it. "My name is Cordelia Ashford. I was your father's sister." These words struck like a bolt from the blue. Theodore Ashford, the name Vernon had mentioned. "Yes, Theo." Cordelia's voice softened at the mention of his name. "He passed away 3 years ago, but he knew about you. He spent his final months ensuring you would be taken care of when this day came. He knew it would happen. He knew Vernon Westbrook too well not to foresee it. Men like Vernon cannot leave perceived slights unpunished. Raising another man's son, it would have gnawed at him until he found the perfect moment for revenge. That day, the truth pierced his consciousness like lightning, scattering the years-long veil of lies that had shrouded his life. In Holden's hands lay an old envelope, inside which rested a handwritten letter. The paper, thinned by time, held the warmth of countless touches. "My dear son, if these lines have reached you, it means you have learned the truth, and I can finally speak to you openly," the first sentence read. Cordelia, as if anticipating a storm of emotions, quietly murmured, "Read this later, in private. But know that he loved you, even without the chance to meet. He followed your successes, collected articles about your architectural projects, proud that you inherited his artistic vision, managing to embody it in art that provides people shelter." A cold question escaped Holden's lips. What did he leave me? It might have sounded crude, but at that moment only one thing mattered. Would he have a roof over his head? "Everything," Cordelia replied. "Paintings valued in private collections at approximately $12 million, an estate in France, a townhouse in New York, a modest cabin in Vermont, and an investment portfolio built from the sale of his artworks, yielding another $18 million. After taxes and fees, you'll receive about $30 million. $30 million. It wasn't the Westbrooks' $90 million, but it was his by birthright. There's something else," Cordelia continued. "You have sisters, half-sisters, Penelope and Juniper. They are artists too and know of your existence. They are eager to meet you." At that moment, Holden heard hurried footsteps behind him. Deacon and Sloane rushed toward him. "Holden," Sloane called, "don't just leave." He turned to them, to his sister and best friend, the two people who had stood by him in that nightmarish garden. "I have to go," he said firmly. "Where?" Deacon asked. "You have nowhere to go." Holden looked at Cordelia, who gave a subtle nod. "On the contrary, I do. I have a father who left me his entire fortune. I have an aunt who came to find me. I have sisters I never knew existed. I have an entire life I never even suspected was there." Tears welled up in Sloane's eyes. "You'll always be my brother, and I don't care what Dad says." "I know, and you'll always be my sister, but I can't go back there. I can't live in that house anymore, in that lie, knowing it was all a charade." "What about Amelia?" Deacon asked. "She ran. At the moment I needed her most, she just disappeared. That tells me everything I need to know." Cordelia stepped forward. "The car is waiting, Holden. The choice is yours, but if you come with me, you will learn who Theodore Ashford was, who you truly are, and who you could become, free from the Westbrook name hanging around your neck like a noose." Holden cast one last glance at the estate. Through the wrought iron gates he saw guests departing, the scandal already spreading through Greenwich high society like wildfire. Tomorrow, he would be the main topic of discussion at every country club and charity board. But today, another place awaited him. 6 months later, he stood in his new Manhattan apartment, watching the city awaken outside the panoramic windows. The townhouse, left to him by Theodore, was worth $8 million by itself. But it wasn't about the money. It was about the walls adorned with his father's paintings, explosions of color and emotion, like a silent dialogue with a man he had never known. His phone vibrated, signaling a message from Sloan. Father is miserable. Mom filed for divorce yesterday. She's taking half his fortune. They met for coffee at a small cafe in Soho, far from the Westbrook Dominion in Greenwich. Sloan looked exhausted, yet refreshed, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. "How's Mom?" Holden asked. "She's seeing a therapist 3 times a week. The guilt was eating her alive. She wants to meet you when you're ready." "Maybe someday, but not now." "And Vernon?" Sloan chuckled, but there was bitterness in her laugh. "He wanders alone in that huge house like a ghost. The board is questioning his decisions after the wedding scandal. Turns out, publicly humiliating someone at a high society wedding is bad for business. Who would have thought? And what about Amelia? She's engaged to Harrison Blackwell. Remember the pharmaceutical heir? Wedding next month." The news should have hurt, but it didn't. The woman who betrayed him at his lowest moment had shown her true colors. By fate's design, the past turned into an unexpected gift, opening the path to his true self. Rosanna, a new acquaintance, shared an understanding of complex family ties. As Theodore's student, she shared memories of his father that brought him to life in Holden's mind far more vividly than photographs ever could. "He used to say that art is life, stripped of boredom," Rosanna recalled during their first date. "I think he would have liked your buildings. You create art that people live in." The architectural firm Ashford Designs was founded just 3 weeks after the ill-fated wedding. Cordelia, with her extensive connections in the art world, introduced Holden to potential clients who valued both functionality and aesthetics. The first commission came from a museum director who had known Theodore personally. The second was from someone who had never heard of the Westbrooks but admired Holden's portfolio. Within 6 months, the company had 8 employees, and the number of commissions exceeded their capacity. Deacon, having left his career at Morgan Stanley, became Holden's business partner, stating, "If you can walk away from $90 million, then I can quit my soul-sucking finance job." The true revelation came from connecting with his half-sisters, Penelope and Juniper. They embraced Holden as their own, sharing memories of Theodore and their creative work. "Dad always thought of you," Penelope confessed at her gallery opening. "He had a sketch of what he imagined your portrait would look like. It's amazing how accurately he envisioned you." When asked why their father hadn't tried to find him earlier, the sisters explained that Vernon had threatened legal action, claiming Bethany had signed documents relinquishing any rights to her son. He stated that if Theodore attempted contact, Holden would not receive a cent of the Westbrook fortune. So Theodore waited, continuing to paint and invest the proceeds from his art sales, so that, unable to give his son his presents, he could ensure his freedom to choose his own path in life. That evening, Juniper handed Holden one of Theodore's last works, an abstract canvas in green and gold, the colors of their eyes. On the back was an inscription, "To my son, wherever you are." Vernon, through his lawyers, attempted to claim reimbursement from Holden for 28 years of living expenses, food, and education. In response, Holden's lawyer, paid with Theodore's money, sent a concise letter. "Mr. Ashford owes Mr. Westbrook nothing." The letter left by Theodore became Holden's daily meditation. The following lines, in particular, resonated deeply. "I failed you by not being there. But perhaps that failure was a gift. You were given the chance to choose who to be. Without my influence, without my expectations, you became yourself, an architect, a builder, a creator. The Westbrooks may have raised your body, but your soul was always your own. Now you are free to build any life, with any name." Soon after reading the letter, Holden officially changed his name to Holden Ashford. Looking around his apartment, filled with Theodore's art and his own architectural blueprints, he realized the truth. Vernon, by stripping him of everything at that wedding, had unwittingly given him something no money could buy. Freedom. Freedom from the role of a grateful son, from the suffocating expectations associated with wealth, from a life that was never truly his. His phone vibrated. Cordelia was inviting him to Sunday dinner. "Penelope is making Theodore's paella recipe. Bring wine." Holden smiled and replied, "Red or white, whatever makes you happy. Life's too short for other people's rules." Looking at his reflection in the window, he saw not Vernon's son, not the lost Westbrook heir, but Holden Ashford, architect, brother, son of a man who loved him even without ever meeting him. The wedding that destroyed his old life had given birth to his true one, and that was worth more than all the Westbrook millions. It was worth everything.